This is a basketball that was autographed by the first Dream Team.
Oh, wow.
Played at Barcelona. Clyde Drexler, Chris Mullin, John Stockton, Scottie Pippen. I assume Magic, Michael, and Larry are all here. I can't read some of these signatures. So I worked on that. So I got to get a ball.
Since the time of Michael Jordan and that fateful Dream Team in the 1992 Olympics, the business of pro basketball has been pretty good. Actually, it's been explosive.
Wow.
The NBA's yearly earnings have nearly tripled in the past 10 years, surging from $3.7 billion in 2012 to $10 billion in 2022. From superstar players rewriting the playbook around sponsorship to propelling the game to an ever-increasing international audience. Today, the NBA sits as one of the most successful sports on the planet, driving not just higher viewership, but also the broader culture, from fashion to politics.
And now the Bucks make a stand for social injustice.
That influence can in many ways be drawn back to a critical time for the league, when then-Commissioner David Stern put together what became a lower-profile dream team of executives.
Here's me, David, Gary Bettman, who was my first boss at the NBA, and Adam. Yeah. So this was David's commissioner tree.
Yeah, that's quite a commissioner tree.
Yeah.
A number of those execs have gone on to run leagues of their own. NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman and Stern's NBA successor Adam Silver, as well as Val Ackerman.
I want to thank Val Ackerman here as well.
Val Ackerman.
Val Ackerman has quietly emerged as one of the key architects of modern sports. As the founding president of the WNBA and now the commissioner of the Big East Conference,
here's Commissioner Val Ackerman.
Ackerman has a knack for being at the most important tables at the most critical times. Big-time college football, fueled by de facto free agency, newly emboldened boosters, and mind-bending realignment, threatens to radically change collegiate sports. But Ackerman's perspective provides a fascinating counter-narrative amid the chaos. A playbook made for today that blends the explosive popularity of basketball with the mega growth of women's sports.
When I left the WNBA, they got every player in the league to sign a basketball for me. I really do believe deeply in the things that I do and how we can make a difference around why women's sports is so important, not only to fans and those athletes, but to society. I just hope that the momentum we've begun to see continues and builds in the years to come.
College sports is at its most volatile and critical moment in decades.
I do hate where college football is.
At the football level, basketball level, and so on and so forth. No one likes it.
And I think we've lost a lot of what we love about college sports.
Empowered boosters, conference realignment, and name, image, and likeness deals are disrupting the economics of amateur sports. And there remains a persistent lack of respect for women's sports.
This is our weight room. Let me show y'all the men's weight room.
But it's important to note that amidst this volatility, there are also positive aspects, such as record-breaking viewership for women's sports, which is reshaping the entire media landscape. The Big East is no stranger to that volatility. A decade ago, the storied conference nearly folded. But today, they're in the midst of a basketball resurgence, capped off in 2023 by winning its third NCAA men's basketball championship in just 7 years.
The Huskies have their dreams come true. I think moving into this Big East Conference, I think the recruiting level has stepped up. And obviously the competition.
Tucked in Manhattan's skyscraper is the modest headquarters of the Big East, currently comprised of schools like Georgetown, St. John's, the University of Connecticut, and Villanova.
This is a representation of when Villanova won their first of their 2 national championships, the one in 16, second one in 18. So this was, of course, decided on the last second shot by Chris Jenkins.
Gives it to Jenkins for the championship.
And so we were able to run down like a frame by frame of that moment.
Ackerman took over the commissioner's job in 2013. Back then, the Big East was thinking less about championships and more about making it to the next season.
The Big East is about to lose 7 schools. This massive departure by these other schools, the Big East could dissolve.
These 7 non-football members have reportedly made the decision to leave the conference.
Football and basketball interests started to clash. It started out as a basketball-centric league, and then the football schools came in, and they felt pressure to build those football identities and successes. And then schools essentially started leaving. That prompted the group of schools I now represent to say we need to control our destiny and go back to those early roots and kind of make it a basketball focus. We need to sort of put basketball first, and hence, here we are today.
This new Big East came into being in 2013 when Villanova, Georgetown, DePaul, Marquette, Providence, St. John's, and Seton Hall split off from the rest of the conference that had a larger focus on FBS football. Those football schools would become the modern-day AAC conference. At the time, huge media contracts were going to college football schools, and even whole networks were being spun up to cash in on the popularity of college sports. Those media rights were incredibly attractive to schools willing to build competitive football programs. Instead, the new Big East, which would now include schools like Butler, Creighton, and Xavier, opted to build a contract with Fox Sports focused on basketball.
The venues where our schools play are iconic in many cases. I mean, Villanova plays some of their games at Wells Fargo, but others they play on campus, now known as the Finner Pavilion. Butler plays in Hinkle Fieldhouse, which is one of the most iconic venues in the game of basketball. Marquette plays at the Al McGuire Center for some practices. They play in Fiserv Forum for their games. Creighton sells out. They're bringing in 18,000 fans a game, and then St. John's plays some of their games in Lou Carnesecca Arena. Play the Big East tournament at the Garden. We've been able to keep the Big East tournament at the Garden for 42 years.
Part of the draw was a high-profile tradition in the nation's biggest media market, held at the self-proclaimed world's most famous arena, the Big East tournament at Madison Square Garden.
May the best team win. That's what I always say. May the best team win.
How are you?
He's doing good.
You are so brave to make this big trip.
Here, I'm gonna throw up the first ball. Ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Ready?
There we go. Yeah, that's it.
Let's go, my friend. He's the best. Thanks, guys, for all you do. Thanks, Commish. I would describe myself during these games as a very interested bystander. Our work is done. The schools, it's their moment. We in the Garden together work on all the trimmings here, but really it's their moment.
I always look forward to it every year. I'm always exhausted when it's over. And in fact, the next day is Selection Sunday, so we don't have much time to breathe after the lights go off at the Garden, because we're sitting on the edges of our chairs waiting to hear which of our schools got in and what seeds they got.
So when you think about both the men's and women's side from, the running the league perspective, where do you situate the Big East now in the broader basketball landscape specifically?
We're in a very interesting spot in terms of the ecosystem. And the main reason for that is because we don't sponsor football. The NCAA governance structure is, at the moment, very, very football-oriented, under Division I, that is. So you've got 4 subdivisions. You've got the so-called Autonomy 5 conferences. You have the next level down of FBS conferences, the so-called Group of 5. You've got the FCS conferences, which sponsor football at a lower level than FBS. And then you've got basically the basketball-centric conferences. We're in a funny spot because we're playing basketball at the same level as the autonomy conferences, but on the org chart, we're in a different box. And so that does require some vigilance, frankly, on our part about making sure that we're seated at the right tables when it comes to not only basketball matters, but also other important matters that bear on the running of college sports.
Beyond navigating representation in the bureaucracy of the NCAA, being basketball-focused has real revenue challenges. Football is simply more valuable when it comes to media rights. While the basketball-centric Big East is in the midst of their 2013 media deal, a 12-year, $500 million contract, the football-dominant Big Ten signed a 7-year, $8 billion deal in 2022. One way to offset that difference? Being good at basketball. When it comes to both the men's and women's March Madness, it's the NCAA that holds the media rights. And while all that money is distributed to NCAA schools, the best tournament performers will see increased payouts.
There is actually a direct financial benefit to doing well in the NCAA men's basketball tournament. Performance is rewarded through the distribution of so-called units. They're awarded on the basis of bids to the tournament and the games won. So this year, by way of example, we earned 15 units because we had 5 bids and 10 wins in the tournament, and the NCAA pegs a value to that financially. The value of each unit is distributed over a 6-year period. And because we've done well over the last 10 years in this event, we have stockpiled these financial benefits, which we in turn distribute to our schools.
Estimates put the total payout for those 15 bids at around $30 million over the next 6 years.
It really sort of is the backbone of the Big East business plan. We sponsor 22 sports, and we care deeply about all of them. At the end of the day, basketball is really driving our brand. And if to the extent there's a business around what we do for our programs, it really is key to our basketball success.
That success means more today when schools chasing those greener football pastures are throwing the entirety of college sports, maybe even U.S. higher education, into turmoil.
I got a whole flow chart of who's going everywhere all over the place. It's just nuts.
Oregon State and Washington State are now suing the Pac-12 conference.
I cannot believe what's going on with college football.
The summer of 2023 was historic for college football in terms of pure chaos. When all was said and done, the Pac-12, once the self-described Conference of Champions, was left in tatters. UCLA and USC had already decamped to the Midwest-heavy Big Ten. Cal and Stanford, both situated less than 25 miles from the Pacific Ocean, joined the Atlantic Coast Conference. Why? Money. Specifically, the media rights dollars increasingly concentrated around a small number of football mega-conferences led by the Big Ten, SEC, and ACC. And while so many schools are looking to cash in, creating truly contending teams has been more difficult and more expensive than ever.
Teams started leaving for the Big Ten and Big 12 conferences after the Pac-12 failed to secure a lucrative television deal for football games.
The suppliers, the TV networks, have a bigger say because of the fragmentation and the lack of really a unified vision or leadership in college sports. So therefore, it's a little bit of the Wild West.
The football-less Big East will negotiate a new media rights deal in 2025. Ackerman and her team's central value proposition is basketball, so having multiple programs playing deep into March Madness every year is a strong negotiating point.
Tastes like victory.
That's right, that's victory, baby.
But men's basketball, despite its popularity, doesn't come close to the value in media rights that big-time football delivers. But the Big East has another advantage, one that's becoming more and more apparent: women's basketball. An area quite familiar to its commissioner. The WNBA launched in the summer of 1997, and the new league needed a team off the court as strong as the teams on the court. Val Ackerman, then an NBA vice president, was Commissioner David Stern's choice to become the first president of the WNBA. Yeah, something I want to show you to sort of set the scene a little bit, and this actually happens, I believe, in 1997.
Welcome to the Great Western Forum and a festive atmosphere here in Los Angeles. It is a sellout and then some. They have had to open the upper decks to accommodate ticket demand here at the Forum and expecting a crowd of some 12,000 people. All of them here to witness the latest chapter in the history of women's sports, the debut of the WNBA.
Ooh, you guys are making me cry here. Oh my God, yeah.
What was that moment like for you from a professional and personal perspective?
It was a blur, really. I mean, it was a year of firsts. I was so honored, that they would entrust this to me because I knew how precious it was, especially to David, whose idea this was, I'm sure, for many years. I think in many ways I was the natural because I'd been at the league for 8 years.
The NBA created the WNBA to seize on the popularity of the women's version of the game, fueled by a storybook gold medal run at the 1996 Summer Olympics in Atlanta.
It's official. The United States has the best women's basketball team in the world.
I had a big part in this and how USA Basketball and the NBA could come together to support the women's national team, which had not won the gold medal in '92, had not won the gold medal at its World Championship in '94. They needed to find a different way.
USA all the way!
The idea that we hatched was to support a team that did a year-long tour between '95 and '96 that would get ready for Atlanta, but importantly for the NBA, test the waters around the interest in high-level women's basketball from a commercial, fan, media standpoint. The team was a roaring success. They went 52-0 over 10 months. It was a perfect training ground for the Olympics where they won 8 games and won the gold medal. It fortified the NBA's decision to start the WNBA the following summer in 1997. Some people, use the word seminal. For that time period, I used the word ovarian. It was really an ovarian time for women's basketball in our country.
To fully understand the W's origin story, we need to go back to Ackerman's own arrival at a then much smaller NBA.
I joined the NBA in 1988. The league office was 98 people when I joined, and then quickly grew. David Stern was in his 4th year as commissioner. The league was literally on the cusp of a rocket ship level of growth. What fueled that, I think, were a couple of things. Number one, the Magic-Larry rivalry was engrossing. The Lakers, Celtics, the two of them head-to-head, those were the big teams at that time. Michael Jordan was just about to take off as a superstar. And the Bulls, you know, he came in and ignited that run.
Game on the line, who would take the last shot?
Me. The Dream Team, the first time that NBA players played in the Barcelona Olympics happened in 1992. That just escalated in a dramatic way the visibility of the NBA globally. And then it just sort of never looked back. So I've always felt like it's going to be the same formula in women's basketball. It's going to be stars, it's going to be rivalries, it's going to be some magic that captivates the public.
WNBA fashion. These women are bringing it on and off the court.
Because at the end of the day, that's how women's basketball's got to grow. It's got to be about the fans. It's got to be not just the interest, but it's going to have to be ways in which that interest can be monetized.
That's where players earn more, owners see their investments pay off, and asset values appreciate in all women's sports, mirroring the men's side due to monetized interest levels.
And so 26 years on, I mean, how do you look back on that legacy? This is a league that has not just subsisted, but thrived in many ways. It's given, voice and opportunity to now a couple generations of basketball players. How do you characterize the league today?
The league is a beacon for me. I mean, we got it going before any other team sport. It was us. It was women's basketball doing it at the high school level, at the college level, at the national team level, with the Olympic performances and World Cup performances. And then it was the WNBA that came first and set the stage and was the model. And, not everybody was bought into that early on. There was sort of a period there of some years where it was sort of stuck. And now to see it getting more traction over the last few years.
At Barclays Center, you can feel it tonight.
Interest in women's sports has exploded of late.
This was the most successful women's tournament by the numbers. We're talking about millions of viewers.
As manifested by huge audiences for college and pro basketball, World Cup soccer, even volleyball.
It's a record setter for women's sports. 92,003 people there to see it at Memorial Stadium to see Volleyball Day.
With big audiences comes more money from sponsors and investors eager to get a piece of the growth.
I think the world is catching up. So first supporting the national team that played in the '96 Olympics, and then launching the WNBA. And I look around now, and it's sometimes funny for me because I hear people saying things today like it's something new. I am glad that the rest of the world is beginning to see what many of us were identifying, David Stern included among them, a quarter century ago.
Now 27 years old, the WNBA is finding better footing. Viewership numbers and sponsorships are gaining, driven by big-name stars like Candace Parker, Brittany Griner, and the recently retired Sue Bird. And yet, the WNBA remains effectively in the shadow of the college game. With NIL money complementing that notoriety, college stars aren't in a big hurry to take their talents to the W.
Y'all ain't rushing to get to the league.
I'm chilling.
While college stars are content with remaining in school, many pro athletes have found it necessary to play in international leagues in order to simply make a living.
The whole reason a lot of us go over, is the pay gap. A lot of us go over there to make an income to support our families.
The WNBA hopes to alleviate concerns around low compensation and constrained roster spots by expanding the number of teams in the league. And for Val Ackerman, she's hoping together the women's college and pro games can see the same level of growth she witnessed at the NBA earlier in her career.
Given this rise in interest at the collegiate level, especially when you factor in NIL and the ability of a lot of these players, especially at top-tier programs like UConn, LSU, South Carolina, et cetera, make a lot of money as collegiate athletes. How do you translate that success effectively into the pro game and ensure that you can make stars?
The WNBA has a different eligibility standard than the NBA does. And I don't believe it's changed since we negotiated a few years into the launch of the WNBA, a minimum age of 22. The union has not seen fit to change that, and in part because the salary structure for rookies isn't extraordinarily high, so they haven't seen to fight it. That means that a college player essentially stays in women's college basketball for 4 years. They're not allowed to go to the WNBA earlier than that. And so that has had the outcome of producing identifiable stars at the collegiate level.
Athletes like LSU's Angel Reese, South Carolina's Aaliyah Boston, and Iowa's Caitlin Clark have achieved global recognition while competing in college. Reese and Clark's rivalry helped propel women's March Madness ratings in 2023, and in Ackerman's own conference, UConn backcourt stars Paige Beckers and AZ Fudd are poised to add their names to the high-profile mix in the 2024 edition.
What's your outlook? I mean, you are as experienced as anyone in terms of seeing this at the professional and the amateur level, at the collegiate level. What's your gut?
I mean, having been a very interested observer right in the middle of things, and now I'm in some ways a little more casual of a bystander, but still very interested in the trajectory of women's pro sports. It does feel like the last few years there's been an elevation of interest. It's going to be about stars and the interest in them and the rivalries and the quality of the product, because fans have a lot of options and they're going to be very discriminating about what they're going to spend 2 hours watching and paying to watch. So I'm optimistic, but I am curious to see just how quickly and how substantially that's going to translate.
Then there's the matter of ensuring that enthusiasm for women's sports lasts more than a moment. Ackerman takes inspiration from soccer, where the women's game has catapulted into mainstream culture by virtue of the U.S. women's national team, despite that team's disappointing finish at this year's World Cup.
It'll be interesting to see if women's pro soccer, women's pro basketball, other elite levels of women's sports are going to be able to secure the interest needed to create some substantial commercial outcomes.
The clearest indication of positive commercial outcomes may come with pending negotiations for media rights, where Ackerman and her colleagues will have to navigate a topsy-turvy media landscape. It has both a faltering ESPN and a host of streamers like Apple and Amazon willing to pay up for sports. In the global sports landscape, having more women's voices at the table like Val Ackerman's, well-known, well-regarded, seasoned, and with an eye toward the long game, could prove invaluable.
If you're marketing to women, for example, which many sports leagues realize they have to do now, and maybe it's the same marketing pitch as they would make to a male sports fan. If you have to stop and think about that, how better to inform those business decisions than to have at the table, women, for example, who can speak to, well, what is it about sports that really inspires me? What's going to make me watch that game on television? What's going to make me buy a ticket? What's going to make me buy that T-shirt? It may be a different answer than you would get from a 34-year-old male sports fan. So whether it's decisions about marketing, sales, ethics, finance, there's just a whole host of areas where a diverse set of voices at the table, it just stands to reason to me, are going to make for a better decision-making process.
This is where it happened. This is the room where it happens.
I feel like we really have proven something. And for me, in my personal role, whether it's in basketball, whether it's helping women, whether it's trying to help college sports hold on to the things that have made it such an important institution, I really do believe deeply in the things that I do and how we can make a difference. And very glad that the Big East has a role to play in the circles that we're part of, because I really think that we can help make a difference.